Today's guest was selected to the Basketball Hall of Fame in 2000 after being an All-American guard at Indiana and 12-time All-Star for the Detroit Pistons. Now, as the very active president of basketball operations for the New York Knickerbockers, I welcome NBA legend Isiah Thomas. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I guess to get right down to it, one of the bigger decisions that you've ever had to make in your post-playing career was the hiring of Larry Brown. Can you talk about that and how that came about?
We were in the middle of a situation where we had a coach by the name of Lenny Wilkins, who was a Hall of Fame coach. Who I have great respect for. And our season was kind of tough last year. We had some injuries, and we replaced Lenny with Herb Williams. And we went into the summer last year with the idea that we wanted to go out and find the best coach possibly that we can get to coach the Knicks. And the two names that I thought that would really fit what we were trying to do was Phil Jackson and Larry Brown. But never thinking that we would have a shot at getting Larry Brown because he was coaching the Detroit Pistons, who had won a championship last year and then was in the finals this past season. So, we searched and searched and searched, and we danced with Phil for a long time, and he finally decided to go back and coach the Lakers. So as the summer went on, I said to myself, I'll wait and just see what kind of happens in Detroit, because I was reading everything that was going on there, and it seemed like they weren't getting along, the Pistons management and Larry Brown. And I just said to myself, we may have a shot at this guy. So it was like a 1 in a million chance that we took, and, we ended up getting him. And it was, for us, it's been great. I mean, he's everything that you want a coach to be. We're all learning a lot from him.
When Joe Buck and I did the All-Star game in Detroit, the baseball All-Star game this year, that was a huge story in the Detroit papers, almost at the expense of wiping the All-Star game right off the front pages of the sports section. What went wrong in Detroit with the Pistons? I mean, here's a guy who won 2 years ago, right? Won it all, and then last year they go to the final dance.
I don't know, and you never know what goes on inside someone else's house internally. Only thing that I can say sitting here is that I'm glad he got kicked out of the house.
He is, I guess he's known, and of course this is a learning experience for me, Isiah. I don't know a lot about the game, but it seems that Larry Brown puts more emphasis on defense than perhaps any coach today.
He's probably the best defensive coach in the game. He demands that you, what he calls playing the right way, which is very old-fashioned basketball. You pass, you move, you cut, you defend, you rebound, and you don't throw the ball away. Those three things he's very demanding of. And, just from the short time that he's been with our basketball team and the players that he's interacted with, it's always been about defense. Those are the things that he constantly preaches. Those are the things that he talks about. And I can see a different attitude in our players already, even though we haven't gone to camp. Just the way they talk about the game right now is from the defensive side of the ball and not the offensive side of the ball.
It's fascinating because the younger people are different now. Their approach is different. Certainly basketball, I mean, you're signing some just enormously gifted young players. I see it in baseball, but it's that team concept that they lack now more than, I've never been one to say back in our day, but it's true. I mean, the game has evolved from a team game to more of an individual game, would you say?
Yeah, and what we're trying to do is bring it back to a team game. You want the great teams win, not the great individuals. And the great individuals are only great individuals because they play on great teams. But the team is first. And what we're trying to do is put it back to, get it back to where it's all about the team and not about the individual. I think the marketing that was done in the early 90s to our game, where Jordan was such a fantastic player and such a great player, everyone had a tendency to follow him and focus on him. And I think every other player coming along after that thought that they were going to be the next Jordan. But I think now we're back to an era where everybody understands that it's about the team and not the individual.
I'm with Isiah Thomas, and we'll be back with Isiah right after this. When Rick Majerus was an assistant coach trying to recruit Isiah Thomas for Marquette, he was horrified by the poverty, crime, and suffering in his Chicago neighborhood. He later said, "You'd go in there, and here was this young guy with this big, vibrant smile. He was unbelievably optimistic for someone who had gone through all the misfortune that occurred in his family. However, he was very, very focused." That's a remarkable thing for you to have done, and the influence your mom had on your 9 children. You were the youngest of 9,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's that same vibrant smile, and your mother had to have something, if not a lot, to do with it.
My mom was great because she never, I never realized we were that poor. I mean, we were poor monetarily, but we were never poor in spirit. She always somehow found a way to keep us happy, to keep us laughing, and I knew we were having bad times, but I was never really angry about those times. I just thought that's just how it was. I just thought that's kind of how everybody lived. But
Mary is still living. Not only
Yeah.
that, but you were saying you talked to her on your way over
oh
to
yeah,
the studio
when I
today?
when I was coming in to sit with you, she called me on the phone and she goes, well, my name is Mary Thomas. What's yours? I go, it's only been 3 days since the last time I spoke to you. So she goes, well, you know I'm old now, so I forget very easily. I go, okay. So I spent about 5-10 minutes talking to her, and that's
great.
all she wants. Every day, you got to pick up the phone and let her know that you're doing all right. And that's how it was when we were kids. And the thing that I love about my mother, no matter how bad things are, she never complained. And I used to have to wake up in the morning to take the bus to school. And at that time, it would cost 35 cents to take the bus. You pay a quarter, and then it's a dime for a transfer. And I can remember asking my mother for a quarter. And she would say, I don't have it. And I would say, you don't have a quarter? And she would say, no, I don't have it. And at that time, I didn't realize how hurtful that had to be to her,
man.
that she didn't have a quarter to give her son. And now that I have kids, just the fact that I had to ask that question, I feel bad now that I would ask my mom now for money when I know she didn't have it. But the thing about it is, I walk to school a lot. And the only reason why I walk to school a lot is because I saw my mother every day get up and walk to work. And I'm not talking 2 blocks to work. I mean, we lived, like on the west side, and she would walk all the way down to the east side. And she would walk home and back every day. And when you see your mom doing that, you got to get up and go to school somehow.
The dedication that some parents have, just truly remarkable. You went to St. Joseph's High School in Chicago, and then you had a chance to go to Indiana. Did Bobby Knight recruit you, or did you choose Indiana? How did that
But my mom
happen?
chose Indiana.
Oh, she did? Oh.
and Bobby Knight recruited my mom. And it's funny because now you see kids nowadays, they get up, they have a press conference, they say, I've decided to go to Indiana University. Well, my mom had the press conference and she said, well, my son's decided that he's going to go to Indiana University and play for Bob Knight. Do you have any questions for him?
What impressed your mother about Bobby Knight?
He never, when he came to visit my mom, he promised her 3 things. He said, your son will get a good education. I will make sure that I continue to instill the values that you're instilling here today, and I'll make sure that he's a gentleman. That was it.
No hard sell.
No.
It was just plain and simple.
Yeah, never said that he's going to play 20 minutes, he's going to, you know, be a superstar, he's going to go to NBA. It was like he's going to get an education, and he's going to be a gentleman, and what you're teaching here, I'll continue to teach.
And that obviously
But that's not
appealed
what
to Mary.
That's not what I wanted to hear. I wanted to visit the University of Hawaii. I wanted to, you know.
Did you visit any other university?
Yeah, I did. I visited Notre Dame, Illinois, Iowa, DePaul, and Indiana.
Just had a shot of Bobby Knight, by the way, and about how he looked when Isiah signed 25 years ago.
Yeah.
My goodness. We'll be back to talk more with Isiah Thomas right after this. Isiah Thomas was called a baby-faced assassin when he was point guard for the Detroit Pistons' infamous Bad Boys, or famous Bad Boys. In fact, he scored a record 26 points in a single quarter to wipe out the Lakers in one championship series game. You obviously remember that game so well, right?
Yes, I do.
26 points. Before we get into talking about the Bad Boys, I want to talk about 1980. Well, I didn't realize this until Danny Perry did the research. You almost played on an Olympic team, and you would have were it not for the boycott, right?
Yeah, we in '80, you know, I made the Olympic team, and we were supposed to go to Moscow to play in the Olympics. And at that time, President Carter, we boycotted the Olympics because Russia had invaded Afghanistan,
Right.
and you know, so we missed out on that opportunity. And you know, I was disappointed that I didn't get a chance to go and compete for a gold medal. But under the current climate that the world was under at that time, I don't know if my mom would have let me go.
Really?
You know, because it was, you know, it was.
In other words, had it not been for the boycott, your mom may have said, I don't think that's a good idea.
There were some parents, and mine included, were very concerned about what was going on over there at that time.
Well, I guess your parents, your mom was supplanted by Chuck Daly in the NBA. He became your mom, and what a parent he was. A terrific coach.
Yeah.
And I guess the difference between Bobby Knight in college and Chuck Daly in the pros, is that a fair comparison?
Yeah, it was very drastic in terms of the way they handle things. You know,
differently or alike?
They were very different, but their philosophies were similar. But the way they handled different things were different. And I think Chuck had to deal with, you know, men who had families, and Coach had to deal with young men and try to develop them into men.
Who were getting an education.
Yeah, and you know, Chuck was, I can't say I don't think. I know I never would have had the type of success that I had in the NBA had I not had Chuck Daly as my coach.
Wow.
Because he allowed me to grow. He allowed me to experiment within my game. You know, he let me mature, and he didn't necessarily put the reins on me that would stop me from maturing, but when I got too far out, he knew how to pull me back in. And
within the concept, again, of team.
Without question. He was masterful in the way that when we all first got together as, you know, 22, 23-year-olds, how he let us grow, and the more we grew, the more he let go. And now that I'm older, the difficult part is letting go and letting your team grow and letting that person become a man. And you know, he was brilliant at the way he did it for all of us. And
we're talking about Bill Laimbeer, Dennis Rodman, Joe Dumars,
John Sally, you Rick Mahorn, all of us, Vinnie Johnson, how we all came together as young pups, and he kind of guided us through the league. And like I said, we never would have had the type of success we had it not been for Chuck Daly.
Some footage of Isiah and the Detroit Pistons, the first championship that the Detroit Pistons ever won, 1989.
Yeah.
Right? And moving from Fort Wayne, Indiana,
to
Detroit, and it took 31 years to win a pennant, a title. I didn't realize you and Bill Laimbeer were as close as you were until you had the problem with Karl Malone.
Yeah.
Right. When he 40 stitches in the face, Laimbeer picked you up, carried you into the locker room.
Yeah. No, Laimbeer was the closest to me on that team. I got a lot of credit, because, I scored points and everything, but Laimbeer was the rock. Everything revolved around him. He was, again, without him and without a lot of guys on our team, we wouldn't have had the success. But
he was certainly the guy with the reputation that pinned the bad boy tag on the Pistons.
Yeah,
Is that fair?
Yeah, and he was willing to wear the black hat. He was willing to wear the black hat and be the bad guy and let us kind of roam around on the outside and be the assassins. He was a real tough guy mentally, and the things that we all went through together. I would get in the foxhole any day with Bill Laimbeer. I mean, he's my kind of guy. He's my kind of man. I love him. I mean, I would fight for him any day, anywhere, with anybody.
I'm with Isiah Thomas, who is now the president of the New York Knicks, and we'll be back to talk more with Isiah right after this. As impressive as Isiah Thomas is in basketball, he's also quite an entrepreneur. I mean, you go to the Toronto Raptors as part owner of that team, and now your baby is what is it? The Dale and Thomas popcorn? Is that right?
Dale and Thomas popcorn. And
you have always loved popcorn, right?
Yeah, ever since I was a kid, because that was the one thing that we could afford to eat. So it was breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But I loved it. And whatever arena you walked into, you always smelled the popcorn. So the game really didn't start until the popcorn came on. So it's like I always looked at popcorn, and when I got into the NBA, I said, I'm going to start me like a chain of popcorn stores because everybody loves it, everyone eats it, and seeing what Starbucks did to coffee and seeing what Krispy Kreme did with the donut, I thought we could do the same thing with popcorn.
Are you doing that?
Yeah,
I mean, that's a great idea.
Yeah, so we have franchises now that we're selling across the country, and it's called Dale and Thomas Popcorn. And so far so good.
Isiah, what can we look for out of the Nexus during this forthcoming season?
Well, I know one thing. I know we'll defend better, and we won't have as bad a season as we had last year. And I've said this before. I was embarrassed, with the way our team, played sometimes last year. It was a very tough year for us, and I've never been associated with a bad defensive team. And I know with Coach Brown we'll be a much better defensive team. And other than that, it'll be exciting basketball, but we'll see how the players perform when they get out on the floor. I
would imagine there'll be a lot of eyes cast westward, too, to see how Phil Jackson does with the Lakers.
I'm sure, anytime you have a team that's coached by, Phil Jackson or Larry Brown or, in football or Bill Parcells or Joe Gill, I mean, those teams are going to always find a way to perform and play well.
Of course, a coach is only as good as his player. The one thing I wanted to ask you, Larry Bird said that when he coached at Indiana, that he would only coach for 3 years, and he said he thought it was healthy for coaches to coach 3 years. Why is that?
Well, he just extended Rick Carlisle's contract, and he's been there longer than 3 years. So
Yeah.
I don't know if he really meant that. No,
Maybe he was talking about himself.
No, I think, and maybe sometimes, people wear on other players. Some coaches can last for 5, 6 years. Some can last for 10. Some can only last for 2 or 3. I think it all depends on the personality of the person who's coaching the team. Jerry Sloan's been in Utah for, God knows how long. And Chuck Daly was with us for, 9, 10 years. So I think it all depends on the person who's coaching.
We have got to scoot. I love this half hour. I
Thank
hope
you.
you enjoyed yourself.
I did. I had a good time.
Isiah Thomas has been my guest. Thanks for watching. See you next time.